Hello and welcome to a brand new series of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and we're coming to you from the heart of Canary Wharf in our new studios right here. Now joining me to answer you, the viewers' questions is Glenn Jacobs, East End London estate agent.
Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in, Glenn. And joining Glenn is Ben Richards, founder of Aura Architecture and Interiors.
Hello.
Welcome back to you.
Thank you.
Good. Well, very good to see you both. Thank you both for coming in. And let's start off with you, Glenn. Will the trend of more and more agents becoming self-employed brokers rather than being exclusively employed continue? And if so, what are the pros and cons for both agent, vendor and purchaser? Now, I should just explain to our viewers that there has been this move away from for agents being employed by a company to going on their own, calling themselves brokers, but actually in some cases in a rather unsupported role. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah. I think, if I'm honest, I think there's room in the market for both models. I think it's almost going to be feast or famine for a lot of the freelance brokers and that style of brokerage. I think if you have good grounding and have been working in the industry for quite a long time and have an understanding of what can go wrong and how to prevent that before it even starts going wrong, that's going to be a real important thing for a vendor. However, what I think is happening at the moment is you've got a lot of these brokerages selling the dream of you can go and earn a fortune being a freelance estate agent, and all that's happening is young, inexperienced people are going and knocking on millionaires' houses and not having a clue what they're going to be discussing or talking about. So I think that's a real problem, and it might become an annoyance for certain people because of TV shows and social media advertising. I think that's where I have an issue with it. I think I spoke before as well in regards to the fee element of it. I think a lot of these brokerages are there just to earn a fee, an ongoing commission on a monthly basis out of these individuals, rather than giving them the support that they need to get going in the industry. I think I've been doing this 20 years, and I think that the things that I've done wrong have made me the person that I am today in regards to knowing how to prevent that before it happens. You go and sit down in a room for a week, that doesn't sort of supplement for a lifetime worth of experiences on what's happening in the property industry.
I have to say, I do think sort of corporate support is quite important. Two or three things. One, as an individual, you're not going to have the database of purchasers that you probably need to effect a sale. I know the popular thing for a vendor to say is, crikey, you've earned a huge fee and all you've done is walk around my property.
Yeah.
But they don't realise the database that you've got to produce, the advertising that you've got to work on. The whole presence of your operation has to be credible, doesn't it, to get good results?
Absolutely. In the modern day, I think it's not just a case of posting it onto Rightmove.
No.
That doesn't sell a property. I look at doing things like this isn't a usual thing, but I had some airspace to sell, roof space in Kensington. So what I did, I've got someone that I know at one of the major newspapers, and I sent this over here as a quirky story for them. And I said, look, if we go and put this in your paper, it will go viral. And that's how we sold it, basically, long and short of it. But a sort of inexperienced individual not dealing with that sort of aspect won't deem that as, they probably think is a joke, selling airspace, rather than an actual thing that can be sold with the right rates.
But again, even as an individual broker, unsupported, and you go to the press with something, you wonder how seriously you're going to be taken.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go with a corporate backing, you've got their ear probably.
Yeah, definitely.
There's space for competition in every industry, right? And I think with the brokerage model that's come through, there's a bit of spunk in the sort of model whereby you've got a bit more flexibility and a bit more like hunger, I guess, from the people that are in that space potentially. I know you've been in the industry for a long time, but I think when people have untapped amount of potential to earn, they maybe go an extra step further than some of your bigger corporates that may be a bit slower, don't have the agility to move as fast as some of these smaller individuals.
I think the major positive for it is, I mean, it's a problem that I've always had, is I've got staff and I've got people around me and whatnot. If you're instructing an agency, generally you want to deal with one individual, and I have a problem with delegating certain aspects of the role to less experienced people, even though I know I've got to, because I can't take on 250 managed properties or 30, 40 properties that we're selling. So I get that would be a major positive for a vendor dealing with one person who knows the ins and outs of the trade. That is a major positive, and someone would be willing to pay a premium for that. However, if you don't have that experience and you're not rapport building, you just won't have them people looking to instruct you on that basis.
Ben, I mean, you do developments. Are you getting approached by these brokers to handle your representation?
We are, yeah, to be honest.
And what's your attitude towards them?
I mean, we've got one site at the moment where we do have a bigger player, and we've actually gone dual agency, where we've got the bigger player and then we've got the smaller independent. And actually on our particular site, the independent smaller has been more proactive and sold more, only slightly, probably like 60-70%. But equally, I do find that they do have a bit more agility to do certain things slightly differently and be a bit faster and a bit more proactive around things than maybe the slower, bigger player. But they don't have those guys, like you say, have the database. They have that prestige. They have that sign. We wanted that sign over our door. We wanted to have one of the bigger players and one of the smaller players. So yeah, we use both. I think, like I said, there's a place for both.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel that in terms of having that smaller agent or individual agent, that 15 grand fee, for argument's sake, would mean a lot more to that individual than someone earning a commission in one of the bigger brands that's probably getting 7 to 10%.
Exactly that.
And that's where you get the hunger.
To be more proactive. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that hungry note,
Let's have lunch.
We'll move on. Ben.
Yes.
Given the pressure to build significantly more new homes, are architectural designers experiencing pressure from developers to design simpler buildings, contributing to both lower cost and construction speed?
Yeah, I mean, build cost and speed is paramount for every developer. They want it as low as they can get it and for as fast as they can move it forward. I don't necessarily think that's potentially the biggest issue. I think most developers will build at the sales rate that they can achieve, and at the moment the sales rates are not where they have been previously. From an architectural perspective, the design is one thing. Buildability is, I think, the key thing that most architects don't have as close a grasp on as they should. Typically they're quite creative. They like things to look good, but ultimately don't necessarily have that technical understanding.
We've had this conversation before.
We have,
I think you make it too complicated, and that's why things cost so much.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at kind of the spread of the new homes over the last couple of years, the split between houses and flats are 75%, 25%, three times more houses built than flats. Flats can be more challenging. You've got constrained sites. They're often in urban areas where you might spend 30% of your money in the ground. So that's a big chunk of your budget, and that's not really anything to do with design from an architectural perspective. But most people want to live in a nice house. They want to live in something that looks good, that they can have a bit of curb appeal, and that often means design. Most, I think, bigger developers that are building the hundreds of homes, they have standardized things. They have standard house types. Not most of, but a lot of those 75% of homes are timber stick built. They've got processes, and they've tried to speed them up as much as they possibly can. But like I said at the start, they're only going to build as fast as they can sell. And if those sales rates aren't there and there's volatility in the market, then they're not going to build as fast as they potentially could have.
No. And just taking that last point, are the government going to hit this 1.5 million homes?
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
Completely honest. Yeah, no. I mean, we've got labour shortages in terms of actual, need for bricklayers and skilled labour, things like that. They're bringing in a lot of interesting and very I guess unexpected things in terms of the planning process, which are very positive. Talking about minimising and reducing or removing completely the committee process for minor developments, which is sort of up to 10 units, that type of thing. I think they should should push that out a lot more. 9 units has been this sort of limit of a lot of smaller schemes that I've worked on, because that's the type of size of scheme that we work on. If that was pushed to 15, 20 homes as a minor scheme, I think that would help speed things up, because I've looked at schemes before where I've designed to a cap of 9 units to not breach the affordable housing limit, when I know I could probably get 12 units out of this, but ultimately it doesn't then become viable for the developer to deliver it at that level. So we keep it to 9. So that's an extra 33% of additional homes that I could have got on that site but haven't. So I think there's lots of variables here. And
what about materials? Have we got enough materials?
Materials wise, it's definitely stabilized. Like coming out of COVID, it was the 20, 30, 40% increase on steel costs, on timber costs. It really shot up. It's leveled now, but it's not dropped back down. It stayed at that high level. It's just plateaued. Have we got enough? I think yes. And I don't see the materials being too big a deal, but the labour shortages with Eastern European kind of labour going back home, and I've seen that on numerous of our sites. There isn't enough skilled labour
visas are almost impossible in that area.
Exactly. Yeah. So that I think is going to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks to achieve that 1.5 million homes.
Okay, fine. Well, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when we'll be answering more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time with Glenn Jacobs and Ben Richards. I'm Stephen Galpin. Glenn, do the experts think that AI will have a significant effect on residential agency in the coming years? And if so, in what specific areas?
Yes.
Yes.
Like anything at the moment, I think it's the real buzz, and if you're not getting on board, I think it's just going to run away with itself and leave you behind. Long and short of it, I think for me, it's going to take over from things like Google and really, really monopolize everything. I think in estate agency, I think there's room for it, and I think it breeds more efficiency in what we do. If I'm honest with you, I think what it can help with is kind of the onboarding. Make the onboarding of applicants, clients, a lot more streamlined and efficient, and I think that's the main part. When someone inquires about a property or inquires for a valuation, you want someone bang there taking the details and everything you need to go out and discuss their property, their asset with them, or to try and close them for a property that you've got. That's not always happening in what we do. What you get a lot of the time is sort of the lesser experienced people taking those initial phone calls and not maximising every aspect of it. And there was a company in, I think it was Portugal, an real estate agent that designed their own AI platform to onboard clients, and I think it was something like 1,000% increase in their turnover because they designed it. Now I've not worked out what that platform is yet and how it works, but what it seems to me to be is the onboarding. And if you've got a database full of onboarded applicants and clients and tenants and purchasers and landlords and vendors, with all the information there, someone with knowledge and an ability to transform that into business is going to flourish. I get sent out on a lot of occasions to take on properties or to value properties with bits of information, and then I have to piece together the puzzle. But if I know that person is selling because they're a divorce scenario, I would approach that differently and need different information for a valuation than if it's a first-time buyer that's looking to sell their property to move into another property, because then I can take a list of other properties that suit their needs. But it's not always the case, and sometimes I have to improvise and go in there blindly. If that onboarding scenario is AI generated and you can't go past without ticking all the boxes, all the information is going to be there for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. I just wonder whether you couldn't even go a little bit more practical than that. I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, your first operation as an agent is to value the property that you're going to sell.
Yep.
It's not a formal valuation, it's a market valuation. Mm-hmm. And one wonders if an AI database couldn't quickly search practically everything in that county, perhaps, and give you the comparable information that you need.
Yep.
You know, if you pumped in sort of 3-bedroom semi, suburban area, you know, you might get a lot of information back that would help you be a little bit more realistic.
That's the efficiency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of, you know, that might take somebody half an hour, maybe an hour, to kind of pull all of those comparables together, whereas
exactly,
an AI bot would be able to do that in 2 seconds.
And again, looking at that initial instruction, I mean, I just recently sold a car, and it was through a particular system online, and I had to upload photos of my car, plus all the documents, obviously, and everything else, but pictures of the car that I'd taken. And the better those pictures were, obviously, the better chance I'd got of selling it. But it worked very well, because I saw the actual end product that AI the other end had produced about my car.
Yep.
And it was stunning.
Yeah.
I suppose the only danger with that is if you have AI producing your property particulars. The problem with AI, it can't discern between sort of truth and misrepresentation, can it? It still needs the human eye on that.
Yeah. But it would be great for a first draft, right?
But it would be an amazing draft, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. But in terms of the valuation stage, it's not quite there yet. It's more like a Zoopla estimate, which at the moment, it's good for drawing in certain aspects, but you need to have an experienced professional eye with it still. I do use it quite a bit for all aspects, or when new members are joining the team, if they're not great at creating emails, or just, you know, your standard sort of correspondence, and you want it being professional, just chip it in there quickly and you'll get an idea of how it should be formatted, that type of thing.
Are you finding in your industry that people are embracing it, though?
No.
They're not.
Not as much as they should, right? I find this in all of our businesses. Although we've got quite a young team throughout the 30 people across the businesses, it's been quite a challenge to get them to realise that, like you said earlier, kind of this is the new Google. Like, just ask ChatGPT what you want to know, and throw legal documents in it, throw spreadsheets to it, you know, get it to analyse data.
It's not the enemy.
No, well, that's it. And it's been a real battle to get people to realise that. But you made a really good point earlier in terms of you've got 20 years worth of knowledge and experience in the industry. You could train an AI chatbot agent on all of your standard responses to things. It could learn from your email database. It can learn from phone conversations that you've had to basically be a mini you, so that if you do get inquiries in, that 20 years worth of knowledge is in the AI chatbot and can basically answer questions like you would have done, to probably like in 95% as if you would have done anyway. And I've seen this with some property investor clients, recent property developers, where they've built a sales funnel to raise investment, where a lead's come in, the person, like the director, has finally spoken to the guy, and he said, "Oh, I've spoken to Terry on your AI bot," and he's like, "Terry, who's Terry?" And he's like, "Oh, that's our AI chat bot," and the guy on the other end just thinks he's speaking to a normal person and got huge amounts of value from it. So yeah,
I think you can still tell when things are AI generated in terms of imagery, in terms of conversational sort of traits. You can still tell if you've sort of lived it. But in terms of what I'd think really with staff members, it's a lot of the older generation that are reluctant to embrace it. Because they feel that it might sort of replace them, I suppose. I don't know what the psychology is with it, but they're kind of a bit more reluctant on, no, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Well, you see, there you are, Glenn. We could turn you into an avatar. And...
Yeah. My wife wouldn't want two of me around.
Yeah, I know the feeling, right? Okay, Glenn, thank you for that. Ben, new legislation is due addressing the sometimes excessive and expensive service charges relating to new build apartment blocks. How much are architects influenced by the effect on the future service charges that their design may have?
Yeah, I mean, as a practice, as an architectural practice, we are more and more being pushed towards life cycle costs, and to think about those from the very start.
What's a life cycle cost?
So life cycle cost is introducing materials that are more robust, aren't going to break down after 5 years of knocking it with a buggy or whatever it may be. Having that longevity, so you're replacing things less. So over the life cycle of a building or life cycle of a whatever it may be, you're spending less money overall. That's the sort of the crux of it. So your M&E plant and equipment, is it flexible or adaptable enough that it's not replacing the whole system and tearing out all of the cables. It's using the same cables, but tying it to a different motherboard or front end system that is flexible and adaptable. So it's all those sorts of things that we should be thinking about from an architectural design perspective. But ultimately, what happens with those more robust materials, those more flexible systems, is they're more expensive on a capital expenditure perspective, which developers don't often want to put in because ultimately they don't have the budget for that type of thing. So there is a real battle here of kind of what will increase the life cycle cost. And when you see things like PRS schemes, PBSA, big, I guess, institutional kind of residential schemes, they are way more interested in OPEX than they are CAPEX. That's operational cost versus capital expenditure, because they're holding it for the long term. If they've got this asset for 30 years, they want to make sure that the costs over those 30 years are as
And we're seeing an increase in that interest, aren't we? The way the insurance companies are taking over whole blocks now and having them purpose built for renting.
Yeah.
Which I'm a little bit anti sort of demonising or discarding the smaller buy-to-let investor, because I think it's done wonders for the supply of homes for young people in particular. But these institutions are going to have a more, I think, responsible view of how their buildings are run, how they're designed, how they're managed. And I think that's quite important. Yeah. Because it has a direct impact on rents, doesn't it, over a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, there's also, and we've spoken about it before, in terms of you've got to sell these schemes, and if the scheme next to you has a cinema, has a spa, has the swimming pool, has all that extra stuff as part of that service charge, and yours doesn't, well, I prefer to move into a block of flats that has a gym on tap and a sauna on tap for me to use, technically for free, but obviously it's part of the service charge. But those are the types of things that ramp up the service charges a lot.
But do you think we're learning that is an expensive game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've mentioned before about a lot of, certainly around Canary Wharf, where they've removed the sauna and steam room. They've got rid of the cinema room because actually, I know from my time at the Berkeley Group, they weren't used that often. They weren't used that often at all. Just wasted time, basically it looks good on the marketing materials. It sells it to start with, but ultimately the people then live there for the next 40, 50 years are paying huge amounts of service charge for something they don't use.
And refurb costs.
And when it all breaks in 20 years, who's going to foot the bill? Tenants, occupants.
What do you think?
I totally, completely agree in regards to sort of these aspects being used and not being used. I think it's a real good initial onboarding scenario of the sales aspect of it. For me, it's not there's no easier sell than a building with a swimming pool and the footage you can get from it and the dream you can sell from it. But on a practicality level, in the years to come, I go to these buildings. There's many buildings around here I go around to, and there's no one there.
Yeah,
there's no one in there, no one using them.
Okay, well, look, there we are. That's all we've got time for. So big thank you to Glenn Jacobs, one of our leading East London estate agents. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And to Ben Richards, thank you very much, founder of Aura Architecture and Interiors. I'm Stephen Galpin. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.